Corporate governance. King 4 has been released for public comment. The code is non-legislative and is based on principles and practices. Companies are advised to create sustainability reports according to the Global Reporting Initiative's Sustainability Reporting Guidelines. The 75 principles that applied under King 3 have been reduced to 16, and it is expected that King 4 will have a wider application to non-listed entities such as state-owned enterprises and non-profit organizations. Well, to find out how the King 4 has evolved from the previous code, we're joined now by corporate governance expert Mervyn King. So thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Pleasure.
So perhaps we could start by looking through at the main difference between King 3 and King 4 in terms of what companies would have to do with their governance reports. What's the main evolution here?
Well, firstly, the major principles of King 3 are repeated in King 4.
Yep.
But we have many of the principles in King 4, we came to the conclusion they're more practices than principles. So we diluted the principles to, it's actually 17 and not 16. But, and it's apply and explain regime rather than apply or explain regime, so that's another material change. And you are correct in your introduction by saying we no longer refer to company and a board. We refer to an organization and its governing body, so that it has wider application to, for example, state-owned entities, small and medium-sized entities, non-profit companies, etc.
And that's important, the last thing you've just said. Let me pick up from that, state-owned companies and departments. I mean, it's in the spotlight this week amidst revelations of outside interference. What's the role of something like King 4 in these particular scenarios?
Well, the first principle is that an entity, an organization should be run with ethical culture and effective leadership. And if you don't have that tone at the top, as it's known as, then you just get the whole edifice starts crumbling. So it's absolutely critical to have the tone at the top correct and to have effective leadership. In other words, to develop a strategy where you get buy-in from the top to the bottom. And experience has shown when that happens, you can get ordinary people in an organization to achieve extraordinary things. But if you don't get that effective leadership at the top and an ethical culture at the top so that the values are set at the top, then you get corrosion right through the organization. You can have PhDs from the top to the bottom and you won't even achieve ordinary things.
I want to point out to one guideline that was present in King 3, I suppose it's in King 4 as well, and this is the idea that you should separate the executive and the chairperson of a state-owned company. They should be separate entities and operate with a degree of autonomy. It hasn't really happened to that level, though, and to what we'd like to see, has it?
No, it
why
has
is this?
First of all, it's a basic principle of good governance. There shouldn't be a split of authority and responsibility. So what has happened in a lot of state-owned enterprises and in the private sector, we have a majority shareholder or a single shareholder, is the shareholder appoints not only the directors, but then appoints the chairman and the chief executive. Now, one of the most important jobs of a board is to appoint a chief executive, because the chief executive has to lead the management team that implements the decisions of the board, and he is answerable to the board. Then secondly, the chairman should be chosen from among the directors, because he becomes the leader of the board. When something goes wrong, you make the wrong judgment call, for example, the directors have liability and responsibility. And if they haven't even chosen the chief executive who, let's say, makes a mistake in the implementation of a board's decision, they have the liability and responsibility, so it's inequitable, though they haven't even appointed the chief executive. So that the role should be split. First of all, the chairman's role is leader of the board. The chief executive's role is leader of the management team implementing the decisions of the board. So you'll see they're two completely different roles, and that's why good governance dictates those roles should be separated.
It's I suppose, unfortunate that the policing of this particular scenario can't really mete out itself, because there are no punitive measures here if someone doesn't comply to these guidance rules, are there?
There are not, but stakeholders, there's an energetic activism among stakeholders, particularly civil society today. So a company today will not succeed in society if it's making its profits by breaching human rights, by abusing the environment or society or societal values. So the decisions made by a board today must result in the company continuing to be seen to be a responsible corporate citizen. Because if that doesn't happen, the company starts losing value, starts losing its customers, and if it's a listed company, people start selling the shares.
Yep.
So these, what have become known as intangible assets, research has shown that in the market capitalization of listed companies, they're worth up to 80% of the market cap, and only 20% you can see as additives in a balance sheet according to financial reporting standards.
Yep. Final question before you go. Executive pay at companies. I believe that there is this proposal and proposition for shareholders to vote on that executive pay, but that's not binding on the companies, is it?
No, but we've developed the 75% rule, that if there's if you get more than 75% saying no,
yep,
then you better go back to the drawing board, because then it's quite clear that the shareholders, who are a major stakeholder, don't approve of what is happening in regard to the remuneration policy set by the Remuneration Committee and approved by the board.
Corporate governance expert Mervyn King, thanks indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a break.